Okay, Sissonville High School. This is the last part of what we didn't cover today on social psychology. I felt like I was kind of rushing through that because you guys had to get out of class early. So I want to back up. I know we talked about this in class, but I want to back up to social categorization, and we just have a few more slides here. So you have this PowerPoint, so you can kind of pull that back out and finish writing this down. With social categorization, again, just to review quickly, we talked about our tendency to divide the social world into two groups, us and them. And the examples I gave you in class, we tend to do it without even thinking about it. Teachers versus students, management versus workers, parents versus children, Republicans versus Democrats, Red Sox versus Yankees, if you know anything about baseball. And we tend to think that people in our group are more enlightened or better, smarter, nicer. We attribute more positive characteristics to our own group, and we assume that people in the them group or the other group are not quite as nice. They're not understanding. They're not whatever. We assign more negative characteristics to those groups. So, for example, teachers versus students. If we're all students, then teachers just don't get us. They don't understand us. They don't care. They just pile work on us. And teachers, when they get together, these students are just lazy. They don't work hard. They just don't have what it takes like we did when we were students. I'm kind of playing with you guys a little bit there, but you kind of get the idea there. And that does happen. Now, what I was talking about before we were kind of getting out of class, social recategorization. I had mentioned the movie Remember the Titans, and then the announcement was made that you guys had to leave. This is a technique for reducing prejudice that involves reshifting these boundaries. It's possible to realign or reshift the boundaries of us and them. The movie Remember the Titans is a great example. If you've seen the movie, you can think about Denzel Washington, who is the football coach, the African-American football coach, who is charged with basically molding or combining the black students and the white students who played football for this school during the 1960s. It was not an easy task. And those boundaries it took time, but eventually those boundaries were reshifted and they were redefined. The best example I can think of from my personal life of this is Little League Baseball. And maybe some of you guys who have played sports, you might be able to relate to this. When I played baseball many years ago, we had 6 different teams. I played for a team called VFW, Veterans of Foreign War. Not important, but what is important is that we all went to school together. But when we played baseball, we were all on different teams. If we were playing against a different team, we didn't like that team because they were in the out group. It was us, my team, versus them. And I remember people would fist fight after games. They would call each other names. It was just intense competition, and they hated each other. However, at the end of the season, an interesting phenomenon called All-Star Baseball occurred, where they took the best players from every team. So these boys who hated each other and were defining each other in out groups were now on one team. They're now playing on the same team. Did they continue to hate each other? No, they actually got along really well, and they formed a new us group, because now they are one team playing other all-star teams. So that's an example. Workers versus management is another example there. You may be just a minimum wage worker for a long time, but then you get promoted to management. Now, we're used to think before that people in management were snotty or arrogant or whatever, entitled, whatever. Now you're a part of that management team, so you tend to think a little bit differently. So they're including you. So instead of looking at you as a peon, now they include you in their group. So those are 2 examples of how these boundaries can be reshifted. A couple more terms. You have the contact hypothesis. This is the idea that increased contact between members of different groups will reduce the prejudice between them. And I hate to go back to race, but I'll use that as an example. The idea that the prejudices and the stereotypes that exist regarding race relations, the more black and white people are forced to or encouraged to be in contact with one another, the more those prejudices will be reduced. And again, the movie Remember the Titans is a very good example of that. You guys have a rivalry with Herbert Hoover, I'm told. So the idea would be if you were in contact with those kids more, if they consolidated your school with Hoover, I know you guys are throwing stuff at your computer right now or your phone, just hypothetically, if they consolidated your 2 schools, sooner than later you would start to actually not hate those students so much, or think as, or you wouldn't think ill of them as much because you'd be around them more. And the extended contact hypothesis. This is the suggestion that just merely informing people that members of their own group have formed close relationships with people from an out-group can reduce prejudice. So let me explain. Let me give you an example to explain that. I'm going to stick with the Herbert Hoover Sissonville High School example. Let's just say hypothetically that students at your school are prejudiced against Herbert Hoover High School. You guys are rivals, right? Maybe you've never been to that school, you don't really know people. Maybe you tweet and you have social media accounts and you know of students who go there, but you maybe don't know them really well. Let's say one of your friends at your school actually goes to that school for a semester, transfers there. Then they come back, they transfer back to Sissonville. And they're like, you know what? They're really not that bad. They're not that different from us. I mean, they have the same problems, the same issues, the same joys, the same, they encounter some of the same stereotypes that we do. They're not really that, they're really not that bad. So just that student telling you that can reduce your prejudices against students from Hoover, for example. So that's the extended contact hypothesis. The last slide here, some other components of social psychology that I want to talk about. Conformity. Conformity, it means you're going along with others to fit in. The example I used early in the semester when I pegged my jeans, I don't know if you guys remember that, when I rolled up the bottom of my jeans in a really weird way. When I was in high school, that's what everybody did, and it looked ridiculous. But I did it, and everybody did it because that was what was in, that was the fad. Nobody made me do it, but I conformed. Compliance is fulfilling a request. So now with compliance, someone is asking me to do something. Brandon, will you please take out the trash? If my wife asks me that, then I would of course say, sure. I take the trash out. I have complied with her request. She hasn't ordered me to do it. She's asked me to do it. And then we have obedience. This is fulfilling a mandate or an order. This is somebody saying, you will do this. If you work, your boss may say, you will take out the trash. Or you will work Saturday from 4 o'clock to midnight. And an order can be given by someone. It can be a parent, it can be a teacher, it can be your boss, or a group of people. So just kind of know the differences between those. And that finishes up what I was hoping to cover today. So we'll call that the end of that. Thank you.